Hi, everyone. I'm here with Lynne McTaggart, a special guest to the Conscious Leadership Program. She is joining me to discuss module number 8, Contribute to the Conscious Evolution Movement. I'm going to briefly introduce you to her now. Lynne McTaggart is an international best-selling author and a dynamic, inspirational speaker who is consistently voted one of the top 100 spiritual leaders for her groundbreaking work with consciousness and the power of intention. She's chiefly known for the quality of writing and in-depth research and her books, The Field, The Intention Experiment, and The Bond, all international sensations and now in 30 languages. These are considered seminal classics of the new science. She's also architect of The Intention Experiment, a global laboratory involving thousands of readers around the world testing the power of group thoughts to heal the world, which Dan Brown featured by name in The Lost Symbol. And welcome to the Conscious Leadership Masters Program, Lynne. Great to have you with us.
Thank you, Steve. It's great to be with you.
All right, I'm going to jump right in because there's so many things that I'd really love to get to here with you. So let me just start with this. This module is, of course, about contributing to the conscious evolution movement. And so the context here is what we see when we look out on the world, which are these severe challenges, this decision point moment, you could call it, where on the one side, there's the potential for regression or devolution, and many feel that's where we're stuck and where we're going. And on the other side is conscious evolution and this journey into planetary awakening. Do you want to just talk to that here briefly, Lynne?
Sure. I mean, I think, as many people have talked about, as we worry, watching unprecedented changes and disruption in our various systems, whether it's political, economic, and many other social systems, our corporate issues, where we have corruption beyond our wildest imaginings, where everything seems to be falling to pieces. This is probably good news, in my view, as many others. There's a sense that something is ending, but what's ending fundamentally is the false sense of who we really are. And in that ending is our path to a better future.
Yes, wow. So we need breakdown in order to get breakthrough is kind of how I'm hearing that.
Absolutely. I mean, we are coming to the end of days in that essential belief that we are separate and meant to be competitive. I mean, I wrote about this in my book, The Bond, and in my latest book, by the way, The Power of Eight. But what I really discovered in researching both those books was that, many things write the story by which we live, but the biggest author of all is science. Science tells us how the world is constructed, and from there we determine how we're supposed to live. Now, the scientific story for 300 plus years has been a very bleak story of separate things, separate and well-behaved things that operate according to fixed laws in time and space, but they're separate, solitary things. And that is thanks to many of the ideas of Isaac Newton, which were then bolstered by the work of Charles Darwin, which was essentially interpreted to mean life as war, life as struggle, survival of the fittest. There isn't enough to go around, so we have to proceed through struggle, and we have to, beat the other guy out and get there first. So that and has really powered the Industrial Revolution. These ideas really powered colonialism, the idea of one stock being superior to another. Hitler loved Darwin. But it's also really been the leitmotif of modern life, the idea that we proceed and we advance through competition. So when I really challenged that in my book, The Bond, I looked at, were we meant to be competitive? And the answer is resoundingly no. We were meant to connect. Human beings need belonging more than they need food and water, essentially. I mean, we need to belong so desperately that they find that in the main, suicides kill themselves because of what psychologists call excessive individuation. They feel left out, and being left out is something we cannot bear. Connecting with other people protects us from everything, from strokes and heart disease to the common cold. So we need desperately to connect. And we need to give. We need fairness, which is why our economic system is breaking down, why there's so much anger and voting and the rise of much populism, because life's unfair as it is now. The system is rigged, the system is corrupt, and people recognize that. I discovered we need fairness. We have in ourselves the desire to give. So we have all of these senses that haven't been acknowledged, that are really the true nature of humanity. And so what needs to happen really is a reclaiming of these features as being primary, and a system change that honors, recognizes, and supports this.
Yeah, boy, amen to that. And it's shocking that Newton lived from the late 1600s to the mid 1700s. And then Darwin after him, so they haven't been around for a long time. And yet the things that you're talking about, oneness and quantum physics, it's talking about connection, and of course then community comes in from connection. These aren't new ideas. Erwin Schrödinger was 1933, the Nobel Prize winner for physics, and many, yourself and Greg Braden and Bruce Lipton and Nassim Haramein and many scientists have made it their life work to write books and create seminars and retreats and programs to talk about what is true, which is what you're sharing here. It's interesting isn't the right word, but that is taking so long for the true nature for ultimate reality and the true nature of humanity to become, for people to become clear on.
Yeah, and I think the problem was we were watching such technological advancement from the industrial age, thanks to these ideas. We were seeing such, rapid rise of globalization and international trade and all of those things that we kind of left our humanity at the door. We were so excited about these technological breakthroughs that we weren't thinking about its effect on our spirituality, its effect on fairness, any of those things. And what I found really interesting in researching those areas and what needs to happen for us to change as I do in the bond, was a fundamental change that removes us from, I win, you lose, to when we all win, then I win too. And it sounds like such a simple idea, but they found, one of the real important factors that I found that brings people together who are polarized is a thing that Mustafa Sheriff discovered with one of the most beloved psychological studies of all time. He took a batch of 12-year-old boys, put them in 2 buses, and brought them to a camp. And watching all of this from the sidelines was a batch of social psychologists who were disguised as camp counselors. And so they put these guys into 2 groups. They didn't have them meet each other. They had them create separate names, separate living quarters, and they engaged them in highly competitive games and rigged it so that it would be super competitive. Well, the kids ended up hating each other. They were ripping up each other's flags and raiding their living quarters. And they wouldn't even eat together. So the scientists then created a series of crises in the camp that could only be sorted by the collective efforts of everyone involved. So they put a truck in the ditch, and the boys had to pull it out together. They had to work together to pull it out. They put an impediment in the water supply. The boys had to work together to pull it out. And after doing a number of these things, a miracle happened. The boys started eating together, they started befriending each other, and at the very end of the camp, they unanimously voted to ride home on the same bus together. And one of the winners of one of the groups, one of the leaders, used all his prize money to buy ice creams for the whole batch. And so this is called a superordinate goal, the idea of a goal that can only be achieved by the collective efforts of everyone involved. And that's essentially what we need right now. We need creation of ideas and new plans that require everybody to work together, because it's been shown over and over and over again to be the way that brings a community together.
Yeah, so true. And I love that you started with the whole fascination with technology here as a problem. And I think that's true. I think, in the United States, with the focus on Silicon Valley and new technologies, I come from Silicon Valley myself. But the fascination with technology, just for the sake of technology evolution and entrepreneurship, it really did and is something that is out of hand in terms of over-focus versus the age-old truth back to Jesus's time, where what was demonstrated is where we're altruistic, where we're in support of the one, where we stop on a journey where somebody needs our assistance, and help somebody, we're helping them, we're helping ourselves, and we're in a sense throwing this boomerang out that comes back, a boomerang of service. And it turns out that service is actually the thing that creates joy. This is the whole community thing you're bringing in here as well, that where we're in service to community, where we feel a part of the one, not in this old model of separation, but in ultimate reality of oneness, of deep connection. That's where we find joy, isn't it?
Well, I found it really fascinating to look at some Harvard research that looked at communities across the country and was looking at what's the dollar amount that people need to be happy. And they expected people were going to say, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it wasn't. It was $75,000. And by that, they meant, and this was all across the country, so it covered, different economic areas. What made them happy was being able to pay their bills. No amount above that made them any happier. But the thing that really made them happy was connection and service. And that's been found to be also the case in studies of, there was a study that compared people who had the so-called good life. They were living the dream. They had all the money in the world. They were going on all the vacations they wanted. They had all the things and stuff. And when they looked at their immune system markers, they were terrible. These guys were going to be, dying of Alzheimer's, heart disease, cancer, a host of degenerative diseases. They were going to be dropping like flies. When they compared them to people who were not as affluent but lived a life of service, these guys had hugely robust immune systems. They were going to live forever. So that gets us back to this whole idea once again. We were always meant to be in communities, which is why I always encourage people to create Power of Eight groups, because I feel that the new systems going forward are going to be created from small groups.
Yes, and you've brought that point through, and it is so powerful where we're deeply aligned with our small group, which is important because you have to be in vision alignment really to powerfully manifest, and it's just a lot more fun too. But where conscious leadership can go further, faster, where we're working in groups. So thanks for bringing that through. Lynne, as we wrap this and this segment that's talking about contributing to the conscious evolution movement for all these leaders globally who are, I think, very vision aligned with you and who are dedicating their lives to planetary awakening, living into the unity of all of life, and bringing, manifesting abundance for their families too. Do you have, some final words, a call to action to them that you'd like to leave?
Well, I think happening in little places all around the world, there are, millions of small groups working for incredible change. So I think what we need to do is continue on with the small group approach because, Margaret Mead said, these small groups change. And I think that's true. I think don't keep looking for the big change, the big group effect, having to amass millions. We don't necessarily need to change it from the top down. It would be nice to, but if we look at, for instance, America's political situation, the Congress now, the executive and the legislative are so corrupt. It's such a mess. Don't look to it there. Look to it by making revolutionary change from small groups. And I really, as I say, once again, encourage people. A group of 8 can change the world.
All right, well, we'll leave it there. I'll bring in Margaret Mead's quote that you were just referring to, which I have right here on my wall. And it's, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So, beautiful. Lynne, thank you. Thank you so much for being a part of this Conscious Leadership program. Gratitude, dear friend.
Thank you. It was my pleasure, Steve.